Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining with us. I have Gil Eyal, founder and CEO of HYPR, HYPR Brands. Gil, thanks for coming on to the show. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why do you think influencers are a commodity?
I think one of the things that's happened as social networks have become so prominent in our lives is that influence is transferred onto those networks. And a side effect is that we can now measure which people on social actually impact which other people. And what that means is that you no longer have to go to somebody like Kim Kardashian to reach her entire audience. We can see exactly which other influential people online reach the exact same audience. And what that means is, as an advertiser, is that now you have a choice of a lot of options to reach any audience that you want to. And that kind of commoditizes this whole space, because instead of treating an influencer like a celebrity, I have to work with Kim Kardashian. I can work with a lot of other people to reach the exact same audience, and because I have a lot of options, I can choose what terms I'll work.
Tell me about the difference between fame and influence as we drill down into this.
Yeah, it's a big thing because people confuse the two. They look at somebody who has a large audience anywhere on social media or outside of social media, and there's this natural assumption that they can also drive decision making. But influence in its base implies the idea that I am somehow influenced by what you have to say. That means that I see you as a thought leader, as somebody who's important, as somebody who I trust in making decisions. And that doesn't always coincide with being famous. You know, I'm a big fan of Pitbull's music. Does that mean that I will go and buy a product because of what he said? No. But if I'm subscribed to a poker player's channel about how to play poker, and they recommend a book that I have to read, there's a much higher likelihood that that would actually influence me, because I see them as a thought leader, as somebody that I should really be listening to if I want to become, if I want to just make decisions with respect to that subject.
Good point. Why do you think traditional advertising doesn't work anymore?
This is an interesting thing I do. Every time I speak in front of an audience, I ask people if they'd been on the internet that morning, and everybody raises their hand. Of course I've been on the internet. And I say, did you see any ads? And everybody raises their hands. Of course I saw ads. And then I say, do you remember what they were for? And hardly ever do people raise their hands, including people who are media buyers and people who work in the advertising industry. And the reason is that it's become so crowded, and we've become so used to ignoring these ads, or we have technology that blocks these ads, that it's just become an ineffective channel for a lot of clients. Our clients are reporting that it costs them about 4 times as much to acquire a customer today through traditional digital channels than it did 3 or 4 years ago. And the reason is because as human nature has evolved to the point where we see so many of these ads that we just don't remember them. And just so you know, within 5 minutes of logging onto the internet, you're likely to see about 40 ads. It's just not something that any normal human being can really consume and remember in the way that an advertiser would value.
I get that, that leads to the point where nobody's really seeing your ad, but it leads me to a question: how do you become a disruptor and gain their attention if the no matter where they go, it's crowded, you could get buried?
And there isn't just one single answer to that question, but
of course not. But there's a couple.
Yeah,
of
one way
points
that we've approached it has been really thinking about who are the people that you follow and have a different state of mind. When you're listening to these influential people online, when you're watching them, you're not in a defensive state of mind. You're not in that situation where you've trained yourself to ignore their message. Now, they have a responsibility not to saturate that message with promotional information that is invaluable. They serve as some kind of a funnel for you for information that really matters. And for that reason, when you receive information from people who are influential as opposed to just famous, you tend to retain that information. You tend to have more goodwill towards that information, and you're more likely to remember it. You're more likely to remember which brand sent it, and you're more likely to trust the message around it. So advertisers have to be clever. It's the message of programmatic 15 years ago was great. You just pour in some money, enough people will see it, it'll convert to clicks. But as that's become crowded and as people have evolved, that's just not as effective as it used to be. And advertisers and marketers have to continue to use their mind and think of new ways to stand out, and examples of things that they can do that will really make people remember them.
Like?
We just saw, something really exciting with Payless. a few days ago where they took their own shoes and then they invented this brand Palessi, which was
I saw that.
same shoes, but of course now they're
$4,000 instead
now they're
of $40.
and exciting, and it was a great story. And it got a lot of press, but also people remembered it because it wasn't something they see every day. You know who's really good at this? It's Starbucks. I don't know if you remember the unicorn frappuccino. They went with this great idea. They got their baristas to post online saying, "Don't order this awful drink," which of course makes everybody say, "What's this drink about? I have to go try it out." So thinking outside the box, doing a little bit of clever marketing has really been effective with this new generation of consumers.
Does that mean that outrageous is going to be the norm now?
As soon as something becomes the norm, it becomes less effective. Mark Cuban always says,
right,
if everybody's doing it, then you need to think of something else. So the norm is going to be thinking outside the box. Advertisers are going to have to be creative. And I remember as a child, you do everything you can to go to the bathroom when there was commercials on TV. But when you went to the movies, you went there early to see the commercials at the beginning of the movie. So there's something about a state of mind and understanding that state of mind to capitalize on a consumer, and advertisers are going to have to keep thinking on their toes and keep finding the next big thing that's going to work for them. This is a generation that doesn't get as excited as other generations do, as easily excited, and this whole industry is going through a revolution as a result of that.
Yes, what I'm noticing, and I deal a lot with advertising agencies, PR agencies, IR agencies, and the thing that's coming across to me, it's not just what's the product and how does it service my needs, how can I benefit from it, but what's the why behind the product seems to be coming to the surface a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of time when a product requires some explanation, that's really difficult to do with programmatic or typical advertising channels because you don't have the attention span to listen to the explanation. But when it's presented by an influential person or somebody whose opinion you trust, you take that extra second to understand, oh, why should I be using this ingredient and not that ingredient, even though that ingredient might be a little cheaper? Or why should I be driving this car and not that car? Something that a banner ad or a short video that you skip after 3 seconds might not be able to convey.
I get it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Because we're in this groove all the time. That is our wrestling match. All right, let me switch gears for a second here. GDPR and the battle for privacy. Is Facebook's compliance going to solve the problem?
I think we have to ask ourselves, what is the problem? We see a situation where this generation of congressmen are talking to Mark Zuckerberg, who's the revolutionary of my generation, about the privacy of 20-year-olds who don't seem to really care about privacy. They're posting photos of their lives on Instagram. They share their location. They do things that my generation would never do. When I was younger, dating websites, you would hide your photo, and then when you spoke to somebody a little bit, then you would share your photo. Today, it starts with the photo.
Yeah.
So GDPR is addressing this privacy issue that is concerning a generation that is getting older, might not be concerning a younger generation that much. And I think Facebook's really working hard to appear compliant, to do the best they can to avoid outside regulation, or they're trying to self-regulate. But Facebook isn't the whole world. Every app in the world is now collecting your information. Every time you install an app or you sign up to a website, you agree to the terms of service that say that they can collect your information. I think it's a floodgate that cannot be shut down. The question is, every one of us has a responsibility to be careful, to decide what information they're willing to share, to read the things that they agree to. And we can't rely on Facebook to be the solution for every problem we have.
I agree with you. Gil, thanks for being a guest on today's show.
Thanks so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
All right. You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.